Hey guys, it's Kate from Cater. It's Saturday, January 7th, and I'm just here in the rec room, sitting enjoying a fire, and I thought I would at least attempt to shoot this little Homestead Storytime video that's been on my mind. I wanted to answer a question that I've been getting from people who are interested in doing what I'm doing, and that is how I transitioned from the city, was able to buy a property and certainly do that on my own. So I thought I would talk a little bit about how it played out for me. Also, some other plan B, plan C ideas that I had, because I didn't know how I was actually gonna make this happen. So I had a few plans on the go over the past few years. So I started this YouTube channel in 2020 in quarantine. I was growing cannabis, and people were asking me a lot about how to do that, because everybody was at home gardening. I was really just getting sick of saying the same thing over and over again. So I started shooting some videos. So that's what my channel content was. And then, I had the greenhouse in the backyard, and all of a sudden, my house was for sale and I was moving to the country. I might have talked about it a couple times in some of my videos, maybe, that as I was in the city doing more and more gardening, having animals, I really started to think about this lifestyle and how it was my dream. And I really wanted to be in the country, around more nature. I was volunteering at an aquaponics farm at the food bank. I also volunteered at a farm, and I just realized every time I was in the country how beautiful I felt and how peaceful I felt. And I would go to the country to volunteer on a farm and literally weep at how beautiful it was, and I really knew that that's where I wanted to be, but I didn't know how to get here. So I'm a single mom, and I had purchased a house in the city when I was married. It was just a row house, a modest row house, but a nice, place. I think it was 6 years old when we bought it, and it was in Mississauga. So that's just outside Toronto, so it had a good location. And I kept that house through my divorce. I managed to buy my ex-husband out and keep that house. I was very house poor, a single mom. I had a mortgage. I was working really hard. I'm a personal trainer by trade. And I was working 28 days in a row without a break for years. It was a hectic lifestyle, and my kids were little, but I knew that although I was house poor, I knew that I was gaining equity in the home, and that eventually I kind of had in my mind, when my house was worth XYZ, I was going to sell it and try to move to the country. The challenge was, I didn't have that much equity in the home really, and it just didn't seem like if I sold my house, the proceeds were really going to be enough to purchase a property with a house, purchase land and a house. So over the years, in 2019, I had looked at a place. It was a little church. It was renovated. I'd considered buying it and keeping my city house, but it had no land. And in the end, I just decided to not do that. It seemed like a lot. And looking back, I'm really happy I didn't, because that was right before COVID. Instead of buying that church, I ended up investing in the greenhouse in my backyard instead, and kind of having some joy that way. So one of the things that I had been looking at over these years were, as a plan B, sales tax properties. So a client of mine put me on to this, and those are properties that are taken back by the government for outstanding taxes. Maybe the owner's deceased, the property's abandoned, and you can get some pretty good deals. I was seeing 20 acres for $8,000, with an old house. Now the challenge is it's an auction situation, and you can't really go and see the property. You certainly can't go in the houses to look at them. You really don't know what you're getting. But my thinking was, if I picked something up for $15,000, then the proceeds that I had, I could maybe fix it up. I don't necessarily have the skills to do that on my own, so that was an obstacle. But sales tax properties was definitely something that I followed for over a year. I never actually tried to purchase anything, but I had my eye on them. The other thing I considered, I have a good friend who's indigenous, and he has rights to land up north, and I had suggested to him that maybe he could acquire some land, and then I could purchase a trailer, or we could build a bunkie. We could start again using the proceeds from my house. Maybe we could start something that way, in a collaboration where he had the land and I kind of invested in the infrastructure. So that was another idea I had. So then it was COVID, and the economy went crazy, and interest rates went really low, and the real estate market went crazy. And at that point, I started to realize that my property was appreciating faster. So I was looking around my house, and I had the thought, gosh, if I'm going to sell this house, it's going to be a lot of work. I knew, like, I had to paint it, I had to clean it, I had to stage it. And that was in May 2021. So I brought my real estate agent in. She did a consultation, and I got to work. So the first thing I did was I decluttered, which meant I packed up everything that we didn't use on the daily, which was about 70%, probably what we owned. And I started, putting it in totes, packing it up in the garage, getting rid of stuff. Then I started cleaning and painting and doing the repairs and fixing holes in the walls. And it was a big job because I was doing it on my own. I basically spent all the money that I had in my savings getting stuff ready. I got a new garage door because that broke. There were just things that came up. So, I bought the paint, but I put in the time, and I worked from May until I moved, which was April of 2022. While I was doing this, I was shopping online, and I was finding, I was starting to get in the ballpark of where the proceeds from what I thought I could get from my house was actually enough to buy something, a small property with a house on it. So I started driving around. I was driving all over Ontario. My real estate agent was going 4 or 5 hours. We drove from Windsor, which is right across from Detroit, all the way out here close to Ottawa. I saw a bunch of properties. I actually bid on a few and was outbid by hundreds of thousands of dollars. It was absolutely nuts, and it was a bit discouraging. So come the fall, I decided to take a little break because I was getting a bit exhausted and discouraged. Again, I was driving all over, putting in a lot of effort, and nothing was panning out. So I took a break. Everything was selling very quickly as well. There were multiple offers and just way exceeding asking price. So I took a break, and I was still on MLS. I was watching properties, and I had a bunch bookmarked, and I was kind of watching, how they did on the market, and if they sell, maybe I'd try to find out how much they sold for, stuff like that. And this property was one of the ones that I had bookmarked, and so I kept coming back to it. And it was about the end of December. This house had been on the market for about 56 days. And at that point, I decided it was worth it to come and take a look at it. So I actually came out here by myself because I didn't want to trouble my real estate agent unnecessarily again. So I came out and looked at it. I fell in love, and I put in an offer, and it was accepted. So then, of course, the final push to sell my house. It was January of 2022. In Canada, they were just about to raise the interest rates again, and I knew that was coming. It seemed like the perfect timing to sell, and fortunately, it was a real seller's market, and I did well. And so subsequently, I was actually able, with the proceeds from my house sale, to purchase this outright, which is tremendous because, again, I'm a single person, and you know, a lot of homesteaders still have a mortgage, and that means oftentimes, you know, there's one person who still works off the property to cover those expenses, and I don't have that. So I am able to manage on my own, which is great. Now, obviously, I bought during a seller's market as well, so, you know, I did pay a premium price for this property, but this place was a mess. So it was really cluttered. Like the guy collected antiques. There was stuff everywhere. It was pretty dirty. It was a single guy with a bunch of kids, guys living here. There was a lot to see through, but I did see the potential through the dirty walls and the poor, you know, window coverings and the crappy appliances and all things that I could replace or upgrade. You know, I looked at the wood and the structure, and yeah, and I actually fell more in love with the property than I did the house initially, because this property has a lot of character, and a lot of the places I was seeing were like just pieces of land, you know, with farm fields all around, maybe a few trees, but this place had a lot of texture and outbuildings and a pond and a tree line and an orchard and a greenhouse and gardens, and it was just such a beautiful property with so much potential. So I only fell in love with the house once I got here and started fixing it up. Now, 2 weeks after I moved in, I had an electrical fire in the house, which was completely unpredictable, and it was a no-fault situation because obviously it was an electrical fire. So, you know, that was a real setback, but looking back, there was a lot of work done on the house. You know, there was smoke damage, so, you know, all the blinds had to be replaced anyway. The house had to be painted from top to bottom, which I needed done anyway. You know, they cleaned the ducts, they cleaned the house, they actually did pay for the air conditioner replacement that I was going to do anyway. So there were some benefits, and now with only a couple of things left to do, you know, the work that's been put into this house certainly has, you know, increased its value, and I definitely feel like it was worth, you know, what I paid for it. So that's how it played out for me. But again, that's not necessarily how it's going to play out, obviously, for everybody. And I guess I just wanted to elaborate a little bit on what the process was for me, how I got here, mysteriously, magically, you know, how did all my dreams come true? And it was a lot of hard work and perseverance, but I really do believe that, you know, when you decide what you want and you really visualize it and think about it and work towards it and recognize that it's your calling, and if you put the work in, and, you know, you can make it happen. So again, things like sales tax properties, or, you know, there's other options to get here. And I know that there is a movement in this kind of lifestyle. For me, the appeal is the simplicity, the quiet. I've done my time in the city, and I know that the country's not for everybody, but yeah, I'm just loving it. So there's my little how I got here story. And just for those of you who were wondering, because I guess, you know, from my videos, it might have seemed a bit abrupt, but really it was brewing for many years. And I left hundreds of clients in the city, and they were all very supportive of this. In fact, I had one client when I was in the throes of it and kind of, what am I doing? And she said to me, Kate, you've talked about this for so long. You can't not do this. And so I was really lucky to have a lot of support and encouragement. I didn't have a lot of negative Nellies, you know, bringing me down or poo-pooing, or, you know, how are you going to do it? And what are you doing? And, you know, so yeah, that was helpful. But at the end of the day, all that matters is that we believe in ourselves. And I think that knowing what we want is probably the biggest obstacle. I'm really lucky that I knew what I wanted. I knew where I wanted to be, and I couldn't be happier. So that is my homestead chat, how I got here, and maybe what some options are for you to consider if you're, you know, um, aspiring to live a sustainable, simple life. And yeah. All right. Well, until next time, happy, healthy living. I hope you're all doing well. And yeah, I will be back soon for more chatting. And until next time, I'm Kate from Cater, and I will see you later.